Next, we have an extensive question which says, describe and explain the gas exchange that takes place between the leaf of a plant and the air in the atmosphere during a 24-hour period. So, we will write, during the day, photosynthesis takes place in the leaf because light is available. This uses up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and produces oxygen, which then diffuses out. Respiration is also happening, but because the rate of photosynthesis is higher, there is a net uptake of carbon dioxide and a net release of oxygen. At night, there is no light, so photosynthesis stops. Respiration continues, which means oxygen is taken in from the atmosphere and carbon dioxide is released. The stomata are generally open during the day to allow gas exchange, but they close at night, reducing gas movement and water loss. Then, the next question asks, outline the movement of water through a leaf during the process of transpiration. And the answer is, water moves into the leaf through the xylem and enters the mesophyll cells. From there, water moves by osmosis or diffusion down a water potential gradient to the cell walls and the surfaces of the mesophyll cells. It forms a thin film of water, which then evaporates into the airspace. Finally, water vapor diffuses through the intercellular air spaces and exits the leaf via the stomata. Next, we can see the question which says, the graph shows the transpiration rates of two plants during one day. Both plants were grown under identical conditions. The question says, which statement explains what the graph shows? If we look carefully at what's happening, we notice the plant Y shows a sharp decrease in transpiration around the middle of the day, when light intensity is highest. That means plant Y is closing its stomata during the brightest part of the day to reduce water loss. Plant X, however, keeps its stomata open, so its transpiration remains higher. Therefore, the correct answer here is option B, plant Y closes its stomata during the brightest part of the day. This is a water-conserving strategy to prevent excessive water loss when evaporation would be at its maximum. Moving on to the next question, which asks, which statements about root hairs are correct? The first statement is, the cell membrane can allow movement of water and ions into the cell. The second statement is, the cell vacuole extends into the root hair. The third statement is, they are formed as an extension of the outer layer of root cells. All three of these statements are correct. The cell membrane is selectively permeable, allowing water and ions to move into the cell. The vacuole indeed extends into the root hair, playing a role in maintaining turgor pressure and storing absorbed substances. And root hairs are simply outgrowths of epidermal cells, making the third statement correct as well. Therefore, the correct option is A, meaning all three statements are true. Now, let's look at the next one, where we are given a table of weather conditions. The question asks, which row shows conditions that would cause a plant to wilt most rapidly? When we think about wilting, it occurs when water loss by transpiration is greater than water uptake by the roots. Conditions that increase transpiration include high temperature, low humidity, and wind. Looking at the table, row B represents dry weather in the afternoon, with a temperature of 12 degrees and a wind speed of 24 km per hour. This combination of dryness, warmth, and air movement will create a steep concentration gradient for water vapor, as well as remove the humid air surrounding the leaf surface. These are the conditions most likely to cause rapid water loss and therefore wilting. So the correct answer is row B. Then we have the next question, and it says, a gardener grows a species of dahlia, a flowering plant. Each year the gardener chooses his best plants and takes cuttings to make new plants. The diagram shows this process of vegetative propagation. First, a single dahlia plant is used, and shoots are cut to make cuttings. The lower leaves are removed, and the cut ends are placed into well-watered soil. After that, the cuttings are covered with a transparent plastic bag, and over time the cut ends develop roots so that new plants can grow. Now, the first part of the question says, removing the lower leaves and placing the cuttings in a transparent bag helps prevent them wilting until the roots develop. Suggest and explain how these two steps help to prevent wilting. So let's take the first step, removal of lower leaves. Removal of lower leaves reduces the surface area and the number of stomata, so less water is lost by transpiration. In other words, by cutting away those extra leaves, the plant has fewer stomata for water vapor to escape from, which slows down water loss until roots can take up more water. The second step is covering the cuttings with a transparent bag. Covering with a transparent bag increases the humidity around the cutting, reducing the water potential gradient between the leaf and the air, so less evaporation and water loss occur. So, the bag helps trap moisture, keeping the air around the plant humid, which again reduces transpiration. Next part of the question asks, the stems of the dahlia cuttings contain xylem vessels. Describe two functions of xylem vessels in young stems of dahlias. For each function explain one way in which xylem structure is adapted for this function. So, we will write the first function as, function 1 is xylem vessels transport water and ions. The adaptation for this is that the xylem vessels are hollow tubes with no cytoplasm. They're long and thin, and they lack end cell walls. All of these features make it easier for water and dissolved minerals to move in a continuous column from the roots up to the leaves. The second function is, function 2 is it provides mechanical support which keeps the plant upright. The adaptation here is that the xylem vessels have lignified, strengthened, hard walls. This lignin provides rigidity and strength, allowing the plant to resist bending and stay upright, even as it grows taller. Then we have another question, and it asks us to identify the correct axis label for each of P, Q, R and S. The question is based on two graphs that show how environmental factors affect biological processes in plants. Let's go through them one by one. First, P is rate of photosynthesis. On the y-axis of the first graph, we see a curve that rises, reaches an optimum, and then falls again. This shape is typical of enzyme-catalyzed reactions such as photosynthesis, where the rate increases as conditions improve, but drops once the enzymes begin to denature. So P represents the rate of photosynthesis. Next, Q is temperature. On the x-axis of that same graph, the factor that produces this optimum curve is temperature. Photosynthesis depends on enzymes, and these enzymes work best within an optimal temperature range. That's why Q is temperature. Moving to the second graph, R is rate of transpiration. On its y-axis, the curve shows a steady decrease. This matches the behavior of transpiration, which slows down when external factors such as humidity increase, reducing water loss. So R represents the rate of transpiration. Finally, S is air humidity. On the x-axis of the second graph, the factor that reduces transpiration as it increases is air humidity. As humidity rises, the water potential gradient between the inside of the leaf and the air outside becomes smaller, so less water evaporates. That's why S is air humidity. Then the B part of the question asks, describe the process of transpiration in the leaf of a plant. So we will write, in transpiration water evaporates from the cell walls of mesophyll cells, forming water vapor. This vapor moves into the intracellular air spaces and then diffuses down a concentration gradient from the leaf to the drier air outside. It finally exits through the stomata. In other words, transpiration is essentially the loss of water vapor from the leaf surface. It begins with evaporation inside the leaf, continues with diffusion through the air spaces, and ends with water leaving through the stomata into the atmosphere. Then we come back to the MCQs. The question says, 4 plant shoots were set up as shown in the diagram, in the same environmental conditions. Waterproof petroleum jelly was applied to the plant leaf surfaces, as shown. Each beaker, with its plant shoot and water, was weighed at the start of the experiment and after 24 hours. After 24 hours the percentage loss in mass was calculated for each plant shoot. We are given 4 shoots. Plant 1 has petroleum jelly on the lower leaf surfaces. Plant 2 has petroleum jelly on the upper leaf surfaces. Plant 3 has petroleum jelly on both upper and lower surfaces. And plant 4 has no petroleum jelly. The table shows different possible sets of results, and we are asked, which row shows the results of this experiment. Now, we need to recall that most stomata are found on the lower surfaces of leaves, so blocking the lower surface will greatly reduce transpiration. Covering only the upper surface will have a smaller effect, because there are fewer stomata there. Covering both surfaces will reduce transpiration the most, while leaving the leaves uncovered will allow the highest rate of water loss. So, looking at the options, plant 1 should lose a small amount, because its lower stomata are blocked. Plant 2 should lose more than plant 1, but still less than fully uncovered. Plant 3 should lose the least of all, since all surfaces are blocked. And plant 4 should lose the most, since no surfaces are blocked. So, the correct set of results that matches this pattern is B, because transpiration occurs mainly through stomata, most of which are on the lower surface. Blocking the lower surface in plant 1 case reduces water loss a lot, blocking the upper surface in plant 2 reduces it a little, while blocking both surfaces as in plant 3 reduces it the most, and no blocking like in plant 4 results in the highest water loss. Next, we have another MCQ and it asks, what is the main cause of water moving up to the leaves in xylem vessels? And these are the options given. Now, we know that the driving force behind water movement in the xylem is the transpiration pull. This begins when water evaporates from the walls of the mesophyll cells inside the leaf. That evaporation reduces water potential in those cells, causing water to be pulled up through the xylem in a continuous column. So the correct answer is C, evaporation from the walls of the mesophyll cells. Transpiration pull is generated by evaporation inside the leaf, not by photosynthesis or active transport. As water evaporates from the mesophyll cell walls, it creates tension that pulls more water upwards through the xylem. This cohesion tension mechanism is the main reason water moves up the stem. A student set up an experiment to investigate the rate of transpiration in a plant. The student set up 2 identical sets of apparatus. One was placed in a room at 20 degrees Celsius with bright light and one in a room at 20 degrees Celsius in the dark. And out of all the options, which graph shows the student's results? So, the correct answer is A. Because both plants will lose mass over time because of transpiration, water evaporating from leaves. The plant in bright light will lose mass faster, because stomata open to allow photosynthesis means more transpiration. The plant in the dark will lose mass much more slowly, because stomata mostly close means very little transpiration. Now, moving to question 2, which asks about the main cause of water moving up the xylem. Out of all the options, the correct answer is C. The evaporation of water from mesophyll cell walls lowers the water potential, and this pulls water up the xylem. This evaporation generates a continuous water potential gradient from the roots to the leaves. Cohesion and adhesion of water molecules allow the water column to be pulled upward through the xylem. This is what we call the transpiration stream. And with that, we have reached the end of chapter 7. I hope you were able to learn something along with me through these videos. Remember, the topical past papers are available in the description as well as in the pinned comment, so to give them a try on your own. In addition, you can also find some quick revision quizzes in the shorts section, which are great for testing yourself. I'll see you again in the next chapter. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.